right before I graduated high school, I realized I had come dangerously close to being good at nothing at all. I had tried many things to be good at, and none of them were working by that point. I had tried horseback riding, and I fell off a horse that was standing still, and I threw that out the window. I had tried to be a guitar player, but realized that I had no natural talent, and I just preferred wearing a guitar as an accessory to actually playing one. And I had tried poetry. I wanted to be the next great poet, and I would leave journals of poetry out for people to find and then discover me as a talent, and no one cared. I would leave journals out and no one ever read them. So that's who I was at the end of high school. So, and this other weird thing was happening, which is that my high school was divided into these cliques, normal cliques, like the skaters and the stoners and the I don't know, the jocks and the nerds and everything like that. And by the second semester of senior year, all of those cliques kind of came together, and everyone was like, well, fuck it, we're going to graduate, it doesn't matter. And in that window, the nerds had already gotten into their colleges, early admission, and they just started to go wild. You would go into the bathroom where there'd be two nerds making out with each other, or you'd come to school and everybody had cut school because the nerds encouraged everybody to just cut school and go to the beach. They were just it doesn't matter. And they started throwing parties, and not drug parties, acid parties they were throwing. And it was awesome. And then the greatest thing was that they had started dating and sleeping with the sort of attractive but not popular or well sought after girls in school. And I was like, this is my opportunity to hook up with a nerd and maybe have a boyfriend for the last few months of high school. And I hadn't had a boyfriend throughout all of high school. And so I set my eyes on the second hottest nerd, Paul. The first hottest nerd, Mike, I decided to squash that interest when I saw him Windexing windows during a party he was having, while he was having the party, and I was like, I could never fuck that person. People were raging and he was cleaning, and it was just repulsed me. So I went after the second hottest nerd, Paul, and he went for it. And so we start dating, and it's sort of like this 80s movie, except it's the late 90s, and it's like Chumbawamba instead of Wang Chung is playing in the background, and we're not in love at all. It's just two people that are let's just seize high school, and we have nothing in common. He's going off to an Ivy League school to study politics. I'm going off to Ithaca College to study drama. We're not the same, and it's not going to last beyond this. And that's what it is. And we have a lot of fun. And at one point, my parents went away for the weekend, and at the time, I worked in this bakery. And there was, many bakeries, there was a creepy baker that lurked in the back. And my parents are going away for the weekend, and the creepy baker came out and was like, Margot, I heard you're on your own this weekend. And I was like, yeah, I am. And he goes, I wanted to give you this. And he gave me one of those Home Depot-sized buckets filled with buttercream. And he was like, I wanted to give this to you. And I was like, thanks, man. And he was like, just tell me everything you do with it. And I was like, I will. Okay, thank you. And so I take it, and it was definitely a strange workplace sexual harassment that there is no code for that. It's he gave me buttercream and told me to do weird things with it and tell him about it. So I had this black bucket of buttercream that this baker gave me, and so Paul the nerd and I, we had a buttercream fight that weekend that my parents were away, and then we shaved my legs with the buttercream in a bathtub, and then I took his virginity sometime along that weekend. Now, I hadn't had a boyfriend in high school, but I had sex. Please. We have needs. And then he left his boxers in my room, and then which was hilarious because my mother quickly found them and then pretend she didn't, and then put them back a little bit differently than where they were, and that's how I discovered it. And that was basically her parenting technique was throughout my childhood. It was just I'm just gonna pretend nothing happened. So and then it's time to graduate, and we graduate, and it's time for us to go off to school, and we have this great summer together, but it's over. And so we decide that we're gonna end things at the end of the summer and keep the door open, communication open, but we're gonna move on. And it was kind of this gray thing, well, let's see what happens, but we're not planning on staying together. And so I go off to college, and the morning that I go off to college, he leaves me this handwritten note on my doorstep, telling me how much this all meant to him, which I think made me happy to have graduated high school in the late 90s rather than now, because that would have just been an emoji. So that was really, really sweet that he did that. And then I go off to college. And the weird thing was when I got to college, like immediately everything changed. Like I wasn't weird or strange. I completely fit in this arts community. I didn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't feel out of place. I didn't feel like that I had no prospects for love. Like I felt like a completely different person when I got to college, and I immediately fell for this older French painter guy, and I started enrolling in all these dance classes. And the strange thing was, I was actually quite good as a dancer, and I had never really noticed this before, or even tried. But I had natural ability, and my teachers quickly moved me from the back row to the front to start demonstrating things, and like the way I was built that I always thought was this like gawky frame suddenly made a lot of sense. And I had felt like I had really found something, and I really was falling for this other guy, and I just wanted to end things with the nerd guy back home. So officially, so I called him and I was like, I just want you to know that like I'm moving on, and I don't know, we left things sort of gray, but I really want to close the door. And he was like, okay, so this is definitely over between us. And I was like, yeah, it's just like things are changing. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I'm a dancer now. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm a dancer. And he was like, I don't understand what that has. And I go, I make art with my body now. Maybe you wouldn't understand that. And he just like gave me this complete silence for this comment, which was well deserved because it was the most pretentious thing I've ever said in my life. And he was like, all right, okay, fine. So this is done. And the conversation ended very poorly. And I kind of just put it out of my mind because I was away, and I kept dancing, and I started dating this other guy, and then I went home for Thanksgiving. And I was like, I'm sure he'll be over it, and we'll be friends. And we all agreed that we were all going to hang out and go to this homecoming dance, and he was driving. And I was like, great, we're friends, everything's fine. And he picks me up, and it's him and another person, and I'm reserved, to sit in the back seat. So I'm like, okay, back seat, that's fine. And so we go to this homecoming dance, and we're there, and we're deciding whether or not we're going to get out of the car, because suddenly when we arrive, it seems like it's going to be very lame to go. And everybody's deciding whether or not they're going to go to this dance, and they're arguing about it in the car. And I'm in the back seat, and I have like one leg in, one leg out. I'm like, what's going on here? And in that moment, he decides that we're not going, and he just starts to drive. And the car drives right onto my foot. And then I scream, and because I scream, he then stops the car right on, and my foot's kind of like at this angle now, and he stops the entire car, and the foot like pauses, and I'm like, my foot, you're on my foot, and then he finally goes off, and I'm screaming and crying in pain, and I was like, maybe we're not gonna be friends, like this is not. And I was like, I need to go to a hospital. He was like, no, I'm not gonna have this on me. I'm not gonna be liable for that. Like, and I was like, excuse me? And I was like, I need to go to a hospital right now. And he was like, no. And then he dropped me at a friend's mother's house who was a nurse. He was like, let her take care. And so I arrived at my friend's house whose mom was a nurse who looked at my foot and was like, you need to go to a hospital right now. So this random person takes me to a hospital, and where my foot is completely damaged. There's permanent bone damage in it. I leave the hospital in a wheelchair, and the doctor tells me that I have to stay off it for a while. And I was like, how long? And he goes, a couple months, you're going to be on crutches. And I said, okay. And he goes, and there's going to be some permanent bone damage to your left foot. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he was like, you're just going to be limited. He goes, this motion of... I can't even really do it. Of this, he's like, it's very bad. I was like, releve? And he was like, yeah, that motion forever is going to be very hard for you. And so I was like, Jesus Christ, like I can't be a dancer if I can't have my releve. And I'm just like, my God, he crushes this, And so I go back to college, and I'm devastated. Like, I am devastated because I'm like, God, I find my calling. I'm good at one thing, and I had 2 months with it, and now I'm on crutches, and I can't do anything because of this stupid nerd back home. And I'm so angry about it. By the way, he never calls to see if I'm okay. And because it was technically a car accident, and it should have gone on his insurance, he never took any liability, and he never took any ownership of what happened, and we ended up paying for everything, and he never paid for anything. So he was a real dick about the whole thing. I'm not going to mince words. He was like a sweet nerd, and then this happened. I was like, okay, I see who you really are. So I go back to school, and I go into my dance class, and I'm in crutches. And the teacher's like, what happened? Margot, what happened? And I was like, It's a story. She's like, well, tell us, tell us. And she goes, you were my long-stemmed beauty. And I was like, not anymore, not anymore. So I go and I stand in front of the class and I'm on crutches. And she's like, all right, well, tell us what happened. And I was like, okay, well, in high school, I dated this, nerd. And it was just brief and whatever. And I start launching into the exact same story I just told all of you guys. I'm like, there was this other guy with the Windexing, and I'm like, not fucking that guy. I tell them everything I tell you. But these ballerinas are kind of, laughing at the story. I'm like, and then he ran over my foot with his car. And, they're like, what? And it was like the Apollo. I'm not kidding. I had this moment where I'm telling this story on crutches, and I, felt so alive in front of this class telling them, and I'm so happy that about this weird performance art I've done in this ballet class. And the teacher's like, all right, well, I guess you're going to sit out for the rest of the semester, but just go back to your chair and take notes on ballet, and I guess that's what we're going to do. And I was like, okay. So I go back to my chair and I take out my notebook, and I have every intention of taking notes on ballet, but I don't. I then wrote down everything that I had just said to the class, and I was like, I don't know what this is. This thing I did where I told them about something true that happened to me. But I was like, but I like that. And I don't know, and maybe someday that's gonna be the thing that I'm gonna be really good at. And I wrote it out, and I closed it, and I put it away, and turned out to be true. Thanks.
Margot Leitman, ladies and gentlemen.